Okay, so how I put together a deck. Um, there are some synergies that you want to look for. For example, um, you have Gold Sentry Ant here, and it's basically going to get a +1 defense for any other ants on the field. So you want to look for other ants in the set to build a ant tribal possibly, um, or at least enough ants to make it a viable kind of sub theme of the deck. We pair that with this nice gold field ants. Gold field ants is great. It's just a 1 drop, so it's a really good 1 drop. It's a 1/1 body, but also when it goes into the splat zone, it creates a 1/1 ant token. So if gold sentry ants out in the field, you could still have trump block with its gold field ants. It will basically replace itself, and you still have ants in the field. Um, what else can I put together? Bees. There's also a little bit of bee tribal here. We have honeybee alchemist, but we also have this really cool um, bumblebee. And what bumblebee does is bumblebee gets a +1 defense for each bee in the hive. So having multiple bees in your deck will kind of help bumblebee be a good defender. Bumblebee also can be a good devoter. She taps for 2 devotion. So that's kind of synergies there. Also, the shovel. The shovel is basically neutral card. You can put it in any deck. It has the ability to create tokens. You can create 6/1/1 ant tokens, 3 2/2 beetle tokens, or 2 3/3 worm tokens. If you choose ants, which I would usually do, it also pairs well with the gold sentry ant. That's more synergy there. Um, Now, I do run some Morning Dew in this deck for card draw, which is great, but Soul also gives you card draw. Uh, Morning Dew is fantastic in combination with how Nate used it in using Botfly. Let's search your deck and I'll show you what that is. Botfly has the ability that when Botfly is placed onto your splat pile, you may draw a card. The Morning Dew forces you to pitch a card after you draw. But if Botfly goes to the splat pile, for even from hand, you could draw another card. So that's a good way to kind of combo and synergize those 2 cards. But in essence, with my soul deck, what I'm looking for is swarming. So for the most part, we keep soul with kind of smaller creatures, taking advantage of trying to gain dust early on and quickly. You gain dust really well with Woolly Bear that gives you 2 dust. Also, Honey Bee Alchemist can go from field to hive without exhausting. That's a way to kind of ramp for dust. And you can swarm a bunch of these 2/2s like the like another honeybee if you want to the field, or the bumblebees or anything else that costs say 1 or 2 or 3. That's for the most part what Soul does. Soul is also a pretty good defender. So you have again the Gold Sentry Ant gains defense. Bumblebee also gains defense. But we have, if you wanted to, Bottle Cap Shield. It gives a +2 defense. So if you're playing against somebody with maybe bigger bugs, like Nate had the Kaiju out with 5 attack, don't worry, Soul has pretty good defense. Soul's defense is also buffed with this lovely Sunflowers. It is a support card, so it stays out of the field. It gives your star bugs a +1 defense while defending against an attacker.
And also, it's important to remember that while each shard kind of has things that it specializes in, they're not so narrow that you're forced to build like that. These test decks are from an extremely small card pool from the first set. So there's a lot of other cards that don't necessarily adhere to that shard pie for people familiar with Magic or other games that have colors or factions that kind of specialize in certain abilities or play styles. But we also have a pretty aggressive amount of neutral cards equipment, things like that in the main set that'll help you to build, maybe differently than, defending with Soul or focusing with Luna or aggro with Meteor.
Absolutely. And that's the cool thing with these neutral cards and the neutral bugs. For example, I'll show one I have in my deck here. We have Slug Brute, which is a 4/2 cast Stomp. It's a good kind of, even though it's a little bit on the squishy side, he's a good attacker. With that Stomp ability, being able to kind of overpower the defenders and get through for some devotion damage. Um, Offline is also really good. Uh, Again, it's a good defender as well because even though it's only a 1/2, it costs 2. It doesn't give you any devotion, but it's a threat just hanging out there in the field because you know that if your opponent wants to attack, they're gonna give you the advantage of you being able to draw a card. So that's a good kind of trump blocker there. Um, and yeah, I mean, I have diving bell sentry. It's a generic bug, a neutral bug rather. So you can kind of slot that in any deck. It is a chunky 4/4. It only costs 3 and it has venom, so you're able to even give it an extra attack if it's defended against. It's a good kind of threat that if your opponent doesn't have a defender, they're going to definitely lose 4 devotion.
Right. And even on top of that, if your opponent's blocking with something that has tunneling, the diving bell sentry has swimming, and swimming is strong against tunneling. So in essence, that defender, or I mean, sorry, if roles were reversed and it was defending against something with tunneling, it gets that +1 defense buff. So, I mean, a 4/5 blocker against a tunneler for 3 neutral is pretty chonky. Not to mention
Absolutely.
Venom.
Yep. And I did forget about one last synergy. So awesome art by Zip Draw. We have Orchid Mantis here. It does cost a little bit. It costs 5 to play. It is a Bug Mantis commander. It does give you 2 devotion, which is great. It is a 3/3, so it's not bad on stats. But when this bug taps for devotion, it creates a 1/1 neutral ant. So that's another way to kind of swarm with ants and support cards like Gold Sentry and to be even stronger defenders. Cool. You got anything else to add, Nate?
Um, I don't. I mean, it's a fun game. It's pretty straightforward, and I think if anyone has experience, playing any TCGs, really, it should be fairly easy to pick up and play. It's family friendly, so I know in my experience, I mean, I've been playing TCGs since 1995, and I've just personally, the hive mechanic and everything I feel like is pretty unique, which is something nice for, veteran game players to, with all these games constantly coming out, I feel like a lot of them have way too many similarities. Yet, I think this is unique enough that it's exciting, but it has a lot of aspects to it that are common enough that it's easy to segue into. Um, but if you're a fan of bugs or comic books, I think this may appeal since it's both really.
And last thing I will add, even though it's not necessarily learn to play specific, we are going to self-fund the whole game in its entirety. We have all of the art being created before Kickstarter. We have all the gameplay basically established, and we're continuing to play test to improve upon it. And we're going to take it a step further, and we're even going to self-fund the first edition of Shard Bugs prior to Kickstarter. All the product will be in hand at our staging facility. We're going to go live on Kickstarter in Q1 of 2025. And once the Kickstarter is completed, immediately after, probably the next day, we will start shipping out product to all the participants and backers.
Yeah, and I think that's important for people to take note of, especially if they've, backed anything on Kickstarter before. I know, there's people out there that have been burned by other projects, or, feel like it's just this never-ending process of backing and then waiting, sometimes a year, 2 years to get product. But I think Shard Bugs is trying to break the mold and do something different where, the game will be done and in hand, upon the closing of the Kickstarter. And like you said, shipping it out right away, this isn't something that people are going to have to wait all that time. You pledge, you back, boom, you get your stuff. And, we just keep moving forward.
Absolutely. All right, guys. I appreciate all of you guys' time. I hope you learned something today. Appreciate you guys all kind of hanging out, asking fantastic questions. Nate, thanks for your time as well and playing a fun
Absolutely.
game. And we'll see you guys on the Discord. Also,
Thanks.
before I go, we will be posting well, we already posted it, but we'll post again. We'll have another learn to play session. So if you want to get some refreshers or maybe download the TTS mod, which I encourage all of you to. Our next play test session, learn to play session, will be this upcoming Wednesday, same time, about 6 to 8, depending on how long it runs. Um, and it's an opportunity for you guys to pick up promos, especially if you play against one of us.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
apparently Nate has a secret surprise if you beat one of us, so that's exciting.